Would you be the jerk for refusing to go to a best friend's birthday party because they won't allow your boyfriend to come? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for telling my mom I don't want kids and making her cry in front of her immediate family? I, 34-year-old female, have never wanted to have children. As the eldest daughter of 4, I was always expected to help her take care of my siblings. I have 2 brothers, 31-year-old male, 32-year-old male, and 1 sister, 29-year-old female. Growing up, it felt like my own wants and needs were pushed aside to help my siblings. There was resentment that grew in my youth because my parents supported them in their interests while mine basically got the back burner. My mom worked as a neonatal nurse. She told me about the teenage patients and what they had to go through, complications and all. It was a scare tactic that still haunts me to this day. My dad's mom had him when she was a teen, so they were constantly worried about my sister and I. I've been adamant about my stance for decades. This isn't news. My dad doesn't care, but my mom has told me on numerous occasions that it breaks her heart. Last weekend, my 5 aunts and uncles, 6 cousins, and their babies, 3, came out for a family reunion. I was put on helping duty. Not going to lie, it stung to watch my siblings hang out and play games with everyone. The food was prepared at my mom's house. I drove it over and served it, drove it back, and finished cleaning. Granted, my mom and sister did help with the cooking, but I did the rest. I parked my car and went out to play sand volleyball, and that's where the tension began. My mom asked me in front of everyone if I was done. I said yes and went onto the court. She stood with her arms crossed the entire time. It was a fun night. Eventually the park closed. My siblings and cousins helped clean the park. More tension. My mom invited my aunts and uncles over for wine and my cousins went back to their hotels. I went back to my mom's house to grab my bags from the night before. They were around the table, and one of my uncles mentioned that my cousin was pregnant with her second. After the initial rejoice, my mom said, "That must be nice. My daughter wants to torture me and not give me any babies." Mind you, my brothers have families and she already has 3 grandchildren. I jokingly reminded her that I'm single. First comes love, then comes marriage, then you know the rest. Maybe it was the wine talking, but she started getting upset and said that I was doing it on purpose. My aunt started chiming in saying that it's every mother's dream to watch her own daughter create her own family, and asked me if I didn't want to make her proud. I had enough. I said I'm my own person and I don't live for her wants, and all of her horror stories from the hospital made me never want to endure childbirth. She yelled, "Oh, so it's my fault," before crying and running into her room. My aunts and uncles looked at me like I just kicked a dog. My aunt started yelling and calling me selfish. I left. Word got back to my siblings, and my brother asked me why I couldn't have just gone along with it to save face. My mom refuses to talk to me for embarrassing her. Am I the jerk? I think 100% not the jerk, right? Pretty safely here. You don't even have to go to the end of the story to be able to answer it that way. When OP says, "It stung to watch the rest of my family enjoy hanging out as a family while I couldn't. Wasn't expected to." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to help my sister out when I'm the only person in our family she lives close to and she has children? I, 31-year-old female, have not spoken to my sister in 10 years after she had an affair with my ex. I was with my ex from the age of 15 until we were 20. My sister was 19 at the time, and the affair had been ongoing. Most likely, they started the affair not that long after my sister turned 18. My ex was the same age as me. My ex proposed to me while we were together. My sister was helping with that and encouraging me to marry him before he proposed. This was so he would be around and they could keep sleeping together. We got engaged, and a few months later, my sister told me I couldn't marry him because she was pregnant with his child. She tried to salvage a relationship with me and asked me to understand and not be mad at her. I told her she was disgusting and I would never forgive her. I also told our parents what she had done. I saw my sister once after her first child was born, a year or so after I'd learned about the affair. She told me she missed me and she wanted her daughter to know her aunt. She tried her best to get me to at least agree to a relationship with her daughter, but I told her it was not possible and I was still not going to forgive her, and I told her not to talk to me again. My parents and extended family also stopped talking to her when she started dating him for real, and they only resumed contact after they broke up. They then supported her because of the kids. My parents couldn't bring themselves to turn their backs on their grandkids or to sever the relationship forever. I was fine with it because I do understand. but her having kids was not an incentive for me to repair things. I'm now happily married and a mom myself. A few weeks ago, my parents called and told me that my sister had been living 20 minutes from me for the last 2 years. They know I don't want to talk about her, so until this point, they had not. She moved out of state for a job and then she lost the job, and her landlord had told her she needed to be out in 60 days because he was repurposing the house. Without her original job and with no support network here, she had turned to them. She didn't want to pull her kids away from the place they were used to now, and so my parents decided I should be the one to help. They told me I could help her by putting her in touch with people for a job and maybe another rental. It would be so amazing. They wanted me to step in before the 60 days was up. I refused to help and told them I will never do a single thing for her again. They pleaded with me to reconsider and told me to think of the kids. They asked me if I really hated my sister that much, and I said yes. I told her it would be bad enough to be the affair partner, but to encourage me to get engaged and help him plan it while they were cheating behind my back was such a low thing to do. I said the fact that she had stayed long enough to have another child with him also showed how little she really cared about me. They told me to be a better person than this. Am I the jerk? So I can only imagine how I would feel if I were in OP's position. And I can't fault them one bit for feeling the way they feel. I think it's very valid. And if you don't want to associate with a person after experiencing something like that, I say all the more power to you. Especially when that contact is specifically bailing them out as far as living arrangements go. There's no way I would ever want to end up in a situation where maybe I can't even get them to move out of my place. Our next story is, am I the jerk for feeding the kids at my son's sleepover donuts for breakfast? Genuinely so confused here, but maybe I messed up. My female 43, son, 10-year-old male, had a sleepover this weekend at my house with 4 other boys. They were fine and well behaved and played video games and stuff. You know, kids. In the morning, I thought I would give them a special treat since it was a sleepover, and got a half dozen donuts for the boys and 1 for me. Quick and easy breakfast for a fun morning. I typically make things like eggs, toast, fruits, and smoothies, but again, I thought it was a special occasion. One of the boys told his mom, I guess, and I got a horrible Facebook message saying I'm terrible for feeding my kids this and that. I'm going to make him obese. I tried to explain, but she just said her son wasn't going there again and blocked me. As far as I know, her son does not have any health issues in which eating a donut would be super detrimental to him. Am I the jerk? I don't think OP was the jerk here, and unfortunately, that kid is going to go, that was an awesome sleepover. I want to stay over at OP's kid's house more often, and their mom's not going to allow them because of a donut. If it was something that truly upset her, she could have said, hey, in the future, I would prefer if you try to do something a little bit more healthy for my kid than a donut, but I think we can all agree this mom is doing too much. Our next story is, am I the jerk for grounding my son over his nonsense? My 9-year-old son, Ashton, has a bit of a mouth on him. I get it, he's a 9-year-old boy testing limits, but I have my limits too. He's been pulling the typical boy pretends to shower and brush his teeth act lately. At first, I tried humoring it by jokingly telling him that I know he didn't shower or brush his teeth because I can still smell his hair from the other room. Then he'll ask if he can take a bath and I'll say no, shower, but I'll help you. Eventually, he started doing it by himself and then stopped. Now he just flat out lies. Last night I asked him if he brushed his teeth. I knew he didn't because his toothbrush was dry. He said yes. I said, then why is your toothbrush dry? He said he meant yesterday. So I said, okay, no video games or VR all week for lying to your dad. He cried and was pretty upset. Now his other dad thinks I'm making a mountain out of a molehill and to just let him go to school dirty and get bullied so he'll want to shower. So although sending your kid to school dirty may work in convincing them to actually want to take care of their hygiene, you could very well be empowering this kid to have that mindset of, if I make a big enough deal, if I press it hard enough, I don't have to take care of myself, and letting them get a little too comfortable with the idea of not taking care of themselves. I don't think OP was out of line here. And lastly, I would just say in general, probably not a good idea to try to parent via relying on your kid being bullied. Our next story is, am I the jerk for blowing up at my friend's girlfriend after she kept being rude to my brother's boyfriend? So I, 24-year-old male, have a brother, 22-year-old male, let's call him Kyle. He came out to our family when he was 18 and my parents kicked him out. I was already living by myself at that point, so I took him in. Kyle's mental state was bad. He didn't eat or sleep until I finally convinced him to seek help. Not gonna lie, I had a hard time coming to terms with the fact that he's gay, as we were raised in a conservative household, but I slowly got steadily used to it and accepted that it wasn't a choice. Who would choose that kind of hate from others? Anyhow, since I was the only family he had left, I became very protective of him and cut many of my friends out for having the same views as my parents. My brother got in a relationship with his boyfriend, 23-year-old male, and he is very happy. They're a cute couple, and I see how happy Kyle truly is. I just moved into a new apartment and hosted a little party with my closest friends and my brother and his boyfriend. One of my best friends, Josh, 24-year-old male, brought his girlfriend, 24-year-old female. Never met her as they just got together. She is a homophobic, crappy person. The minute she saw Kyle holding his boyfriend's hand, she started a rant about how they're disgusting and they're sinners that shouldn't be near those that try to live the way the Lord intended. This went on for a good 5 minutes. My best friend tried to calm her down, but then she said, and I quote, "No wonders your parents disowned you. They wouldn't want an F slur in their home." I lost it. Called her a worthless piece of a human, and then went on to tell her many other things that left her in tears. She ran out and my friend gave me a look and left. The others at the party were divided. Some said what I said was justified, and others said I took it too far. So Reddit, am I the jerk? I don't think OP's the jerk here. It's always baffled me how what other people do in the privacy of their bedroom causes people to act so repugnantly to another person. I've always felt like it's radiated this weird energy of, unless I find your relationship specifically attractive, you are literally the worst thing in existence to me. The unthinkable act of holding another person's hand. Our next story is, would I be the jerk if I named my baby after my late brother? Throwaway, I, 29-year-old female, am expecting my second child, first boy, with my husband, 30-year-old male. When we found out it was a boy, I immediately knew that I wanted to name him after my brother, let's say Noah, whom I loved very much and was very close to growing up. He passed away in a car accident when I was 17. He was almost 21. My husband likes the name as well and has always been on board with us naming a son, if we ever had one, after my brother. However, this past weekend when I told my parents I was planning on naming our baby Noah, they got very upset and told me that I couldn't. They told me that it would be disrespectful to Noah's memory and would be like replacing him with a new member of our family named Noah. They also said it would be painful for them to always hear the name and be reminded that my brother isn't here anymore. I was disappointed because in my mind I thought of it as a way to honor my brother, and I've wanted to do this for a while, but I agreed since I do see how for my parents it could be painful. I told my husband and he didn't really get the whole replacing thing and was a bit miffed, but we agreed we could choose another name. We decided that instead we'd have Noah be our baby's middle name. However, when I stopped by my parents' house this afternoon and brought this up to them, asking how they'd feel about it, they kind of flipped out again. My mom accused me of just using this as a roundabout way to make our son's name Noah, and that once he's born, we're just gonna end up calling him that instead. We wouldn't. While my dad just got very angry and asked why we were so insistent on making things painful for them. I had no idea how to respond since I've never really fought with my parents before, and I've honestly never seen them get that angry before, so I just apologized and said okay. When I told my husband about this, he got pretty upset and said that my parents were being ridiculous and that I have every right to name my son after my brother if I want to. He thinks we should just go ahead and make his middle name Noah. My sister, 23, who lives with my parents at the moment, got wind of the argument when she got home from work and texted me saying that our parents were being crazy and I should make our baby's first name Noah. That our parents have no right to tell me what I can or can't name my child. I kind of disagree, mainly because I'm worried about the rift it would cause with my parents, and it seems crazy to ruin our relationship over a name. Yet at the same time, I don't feel like I'm the unreasonable one here, so I don't know. So what do people think? Would I be the jerk if I made Noah his middle name? And I'm curious, even though I've already decided I'm not going to, would I be the jerk if it was his first name? I don't think OP would be the jerk no matter what they did here. Listen, I get their side of the argument. It will be a reminder and it probably will be painful for them, but their grief doesn't dictate how other people grieve. or how other people deal with their grief. Like, I get it, they lost their kid, but at the same time, OP lost a brother. Would they really be the type of people that, if you did name them first name Noah, actually just cut you off and that's it for your family? Our next story is, am I the jerk for calling out a mom who was embarrassing a Hispanic woman over pronunciation? I, 31-year-old female, was doing a friend a favor picking up her son at a daycare run by a woman from Guatemala. At pickup, I saw a woman in her late 40s causing a scene about how the daycare woman was disrespecting her 4-year-old daughter by pronouncing her name as Tia instead of Thea, her name. She was loud and calling the woman gross for not being able to get her daughter's name right in front of both kids and parents. I'm not sure if I should have just minded my business, but I spoke up and said that the TH sound does not exist in every language and that it's wrong to embarrass someone like that because of an accent. That definitely put an end to the scene as the woman ran off. Later, my friend called to say that I caused a problem for her among the other moms at the daycare. Am I the jerk? I don't think OP was being the jerk here. I think if anything, they were actually just being informative. I suppose it really does depend on the delivery. I mean, OP could have waltzed in and said, "Hey, idiot, accents exist, dummy, doesn't exist in their language," then probably would be the jerk. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling a married woman her marriage sounds miserable? USA. I, 45-year-old female, attended a wedding a few weeks ago when a cousin, 55-year-old female, was talking about how she wishes I would marry. I've heard the struggles of her marriage. She cheated, he took her back, they do everything he wants. She's given up her hobbies and learned to enjoy his, he controls the money, and she works PT and she could never afford to live on her own, etc. And for 20 years I've heard how I should get married. I've always said it's not a priority, and if it happens, it happens. I've repeatedly said throughout the years, I enjoy being single, I've been proposed to multiple times, and I like living life on my terms. I can embrace my hobbies, which are expensive, have a great job, live on my own, have great friends, I travel, and I've had great long-term relationships. My life is full. I've been financially independent since I was 22. She has never been financially independent. The entire family knows I'm generous with my time and money. Whether it's a gift or helping somebody out financially without expecting repayment, electricity, groceries, school expenses, etc., marriage has never been a priority to me. I finally had it with the comments and her not respecting my life. I finally told her I respect her opinions, but I felt like her marriage was that of convenience and sounds absolutely miserable to me. I would die a slow death if I was in a marriage like hers, all of which is true. I like being able to make my own decisions, and if the right person comes along, it's fine, but that it's not a goal of mine, never has been. The look of shock on her face said it all. She didn't care for that and is painting me out to be mean. After 20 years of comments and pressure, I finally said what needed to be said to get the comments to stop. She couldn't fathom that somebody wouldn't want to have her life, and to me it sounds like a prison sentence. She also can't fathom somebody could be happy living my life. So, am I the jerk? Update, more on her audacity. She called me an hour ago, benching me out because I offered to give my second car to my brother's daughter for her 18th birthday, since I never drive it. My niece posted on social media thanking me for being so generous. She wanted to know why I wouldn't offer it to her kid who's in college and needs it more than my niece. I simply told her it's my decision what I do with my car, and that my niece and I are close. She went on for 20 minutes before I bluntly said, "It's my car, and my choice of what to do with it, deal with it." Then I hung up. Update 2, had a Zoom tonight with my family and we read through this. Unbeknownst to me, my parents and her parents have talked to her about this inappropriate behavior for years, going back to my 20s. Even saying, "We don't talk about your choices, so stop pushing marriage on her." She's also made comments to my siblings trying to bring them down as well. Parents had no idea because we try not to make it a bigger deal. It's all jealousy. Well, my mild-mannered parents are ticked and have stated that next family get-together, they're going to ask her how her and her husband got past the cheating and make comments to her about her life choices and bullying. I think that's going too far, but given that the adults spoke to her several times and she keeps doing it, I'll allow them to put her in her place. Petty, but now that I know that they spoke to her several times, the gloves are off. I'm not the jerk. I do think OP is not the jerk here, mostly because they are making those comments about OP in their life and what OP's happy about. At some point, it's kind of inevitable to make some kind of comments back after that. Our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to change my travel plans to accommodate my son's girlfriend who has physical limitations? I love camping and hiking on the weekends. My wife always hated it and hardly go. One of my children doesn't like it either, but to my happiness, my children Emma, 25-year-old female, and Mike, 28-year-old male, love it, and we do it several times a year. Mike has been with Jenny, 26-year-old female, for a year-ish, and she has some mobility difficulties. She can walk, but not long distances. She is a kind and good girl. We have a great relationship, and because of that, my wife and I invited her to go to the beach with us and the rest of the family. I wanted to go to this beach because of a nearby trail that led to a wonderful beach, and on the second day of the trip, 7 days, I announced that I would do this trail and Emma agreed to go along. Her boyfriend did too, and I invited Mike to go. Later that day, he pulled me aside asking if we could actually go to another beach accessible by car, so Jenny could go too. I said I didn't want to because I wanted to do the trail and see this beach, but that we could do that on another day, but the next day would be this trail. Mike said that Jenny was feeling left out of not being able to participate, as my daughter was also taking her boyfriend and she would be left out due to her physical limitations. I pointed out the fact that 4 people besides her weren't going on this hike either, and I'm not refusing to do that, but tomorrow I had other plans. He said that I should understand her situation and not force a situation in which she is clearly being excluded by physical limitations, and if that were the case, he wouldn't go either. I agreed and said okay. The next day, by a miracle, my other son wanted to go, and the 4 of us went on this trail. My son barely talked to me properly the whole trip, Jenny too, and when I suggested we go to another beach by car, he said I had some nerve to suggest that after all. My wife and the rest of the family have decided to stay out of this, but I'm at a loss. Am I the jerk? I really don't think OP's the jerk here. It's just realistic. You're saying, hey, I reached out and said that I want to go and explore this trip. Who wants to go with me? If it's just not possible for her, it's not possible. This is not a specific choice to exclude them, and it is so unfair to try to push this narrative that they're choosing this over their son and their son's partner, trying to twist this into some malicious thing that it never was. This next story is, am I the jerk for not going to my best friend's birthday party because she won't allow my boyfriend to come? My best friend's birthday is approaching and she's decided to host a party. She told me to bring a +1, and when I mentioned bringing my boyfriend, she immediately told me that no, he wasn't allowed as she doesn't want to meet him like that for the first time. I respected her wishes, but thought her reasoning was a little odd, considering I will be meeting her boyfriend for the first time at her party, and she then went on to suggest that I bring Lily, my friend who she has never met. When I questioned this, she just said that it's different. My boyfriend was really keen to go and is pretty offended that he hasn't been invited. My friend keeps pushing for me to bring a +1, as she says she'll be too busy hosting to hang out with me much, and I know no one else attending the party. All my other friends are too busy with uni and work, so I'll now be going on my own, which I'm pretty anxious about. I told her this, and she then started pushing for me to bring my sister, who she's only ever met briefly once. I ended up telling her that I won't be attending since I find it rude and controlling. She's trying to dictate who my +1 should be. Am I the jerk? No, I mean, I understand trying to have a say in somebody's +1 if it's somebody that you directly have a conflict with. But if you're saying, yeah, bring a +1, and that person turns around and says, oh, okay, I'll bring my partner, and you immediately go, no, I don't want to meet them for the first time at that. Don't bring them. It makes you wonder, do you actually have a +1 okay? This next story is, am I the jerk for having my stepdad walk me down the aisle instead of my bio dad? I, 27-year-old female, asked my stepdad, 52-year-old male, to walk me down the aisle instead of my biological father, 54-year-old male. Let me start from the beginning. When I was 12, my dad divorced my mom and left us. My mom had full custody, but I still wanted a relationship with my dad. He lived a 5-hour train ride away, so every Friday for 6 years I'd ride the train for 5 hours to go visit him, and I was happy doing that because I loved my dad. When I was 14, my dad married my stepmom. She had an 18-year-old daughter. I got along okay with my stepmom, but never really saw my stepsister because she was at college, which was a 4-hour flight away. When I was 15, my mom married my stepdad, and he was amazing, loved me unconditionally, and always made an effort to attend all my athletics and important moments, but I would still see my dad on the weekends because I loved him. At that time, I thought everything was great. I had a huge family and loved everyone. When I was 18, I asked my dad if he would come to my high school graduation on a Saturday 2 months away. He said yes. 2 months go by and it's the week before my graduation. My dad calls me and says he can't go to my graduation because my stepsister's is on Friday before mine. The thing was, he'd have time to go to hers Friday and catch a flight and still go to mine Saturday. He told me he didn't want to do that because we aren't that close, and I never made an effort to be close to him, so why should he? He said he liked my stepsister better and had a better relationship with her. I was crushed. We didn't speak for 5 years. I focused on school, which my stepdad paid for. I got great grades and he'd always be the first to congratulate me. 3 years ago, my dad got divorced again. He cheated on my stepmom and her daughter cut off all ties with my dad. In that time, he wanted to reconnect with me. I agreed. We had an okay relationship. I'd see him maybe 2 to 3 times a year. Now I'm getting married in 6 months and asked my stepdad to walk me down the aisle. He has no other children. He can't have his own kids, and has been a real father to me for over a decade. I told my dad that he would be invited, but would not be walking with me. He was upset and told me I was being selfish and taking away the only opportunity he'd have to walk his daughter down the aisle, that I was ungrateful for everything he has done for me. I didn't feel like a jerk, but my stepdad said he would be fine sharing the moment with my dad and doesn't want me to have any regrets in the future. But I'm not sure if I want him to have to share the moment. He is the one who put in the work for that moment, not my dad. So, am I the jerk? Should I let my dad walk also? I think it boils down to who you want to walk is who should walk. Even though the stepdad's saying, no, it's fine, I'll share it with him, I don't think you have to acquiesce to that unless you specifically want to, especially with the way they treated you all that time ago. They told you to your face, I like the other kid better, and they only came crawling back for a relationship when you became the only option. Our next story is, am I the jerk for answering my mother's husband harshly and humiliating him during a family party? Context needed before we get to the core issue. I was raised by my dad until I was 14. My mother did not want to be a parent, and she left my dad and me while I was still a baby. She did not pay her child support payments. She quit jobs left and right so she didn't have to. She even went to jail twice for failure to pay, and the every other weekend parenting time she was given by the courts, despite her lack of parenting me, she rarely, if ever, took. She never took the full weekend anyway. She met her husband when I was 6. From the ages of 6, which is when my mother and her husband met, to the age of 14 when I lost my dad, I saw my mother and her husband 5 times. After my father died, I lived with my uncles. My mother didn't show an interest in taking me, though her husband did, but my uncles were people who wanted me and who I had a close and loving relationship with. My mother did not take any parenting time after I lost my dad. She and her husband had 3 kids together. Her husband attempted to insert himself into my life during Father's Day activities, and he'd ask me to live with them, but I mostly ignored all contact with him. One time, he attempted to tell me I was missing out and blamed my dad for that. I shut him down firmly and I was harsh. I told him he had no right to speak about my dad, who was better than his wife ever would be. My mother's extended family, parents, siblings, etc., were always part of my life. Dad facilitated those relationships. My uncles continued after he died. Now I'm 27 and stay in touch with them. We're not very close, but I do appreciate their presence in my life. They were even invited to my engagement party last year. This brings me to the core issue. My grandparents were hosting a family party for a birthday. They invited me and I went. My mother and her husband were there, and so were their children. My mother's husband approached me about getting engaged and wanted to know why they weren't invited as my family. I told him that wasn't the correct topic for the party, but he should know why. I started to walk away. He said he wanted to be the one to walk me down the aisle at my wedding and wanted to know if I would allow him that honor because he always considered me a daughter and he wanted to show me he could be a better dad than I ever had. I lost my temper with his choice of words, and everyone heard me say he wasn't going to be walking me down any aisle, and he wasn't good enough to be my dad. I called him pathetic for hating on the man who gave me a good life when his wife didn't give a crap. He became angry and told me I should be more respectful. I decided to leave, and a few hours after, I got a text from one of my mother's siblings saying I shouldn't have humiliated him so publicly. Am I the jerk? This guy's just so out of line. He has no right to try to insert himself like that, try to stake any claim to that position. It's nice he has dreams and all, but he probably should only go around trying to force ones that are actually realistic. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.